Week 7 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I looked at off the wire this week. The first hitter, Jo Adell, Los Angeles Angels. Right now, Adell, one of the hottest hitters in all the major leagues, and he's been on this list a couple times this year. Right now, Adell available in 58% of leagues on the season. 7 home runs, 18 RBIs, 17 runs scored, 7 stolen bases, a 264 average, and a 324 on base. So Adell, one of the former top prospects in this Angels system, and obviously with Mike Trout possibly out for the season, we don't know. He's taking advantage here of Adell, and he's making the most of his opportunity. So he's going out there. He's showing good power. He could steal some bases. I know the batting average hasn't been all that great, but if you're looking for pop and someone who's making the most of the opportunity, Adell is definitely that player right now. May 8th at the Pirates, 2 for 4, a homer, 2 RBIs. May 9th versus the Royals, 1 for 2, 2 runs. May 10th versus the Royals, 1 for 4 with a homer. And May 11th versus the Royals, 1 for 4, a homer, 3 RBIs. So he's homered 3 out of 4 games. Is Adell? He's got pop, and he was a former top prospect in the system, like I mentioned, and now he's getting the chance, and he's making the most of it. So if you need power and stolen bases, I would give Adell an ad this week. The next ad, Abraham Toro of the Oakland Athletics. At Toro, he's been a journeyman throughout his major league career, playing in a lot of minor league games as well in his career. And he's a guy on Oakland getting a chance, and he's making the most of it as well. On the year, 3 home runs, 16 RBIs, 19 runs scored, a stolen base, a 293 average, and a 347 on base. But the last couple weeks, he's been on a tear. 1 home run, 7 RBIs, 11 runs scored, a 412 batting average, and a 455 on base. Right now, available in 72% of fantasy leagues. He qualifies at second and third base, which obviously is good versatility for fantasy owners. And if you need batting average, Toro's going to bring that. In terms of keeping it up, obviously, I don't think he's going to keep it up, but right now, he's been hot and he can help fantasy owners, and he's been the table setter as well, batting leadoff for this A team of late. May 7th versus the Rangers, 2 for 6 with a rib. May 8th in a doubleheader versus the Rangers, 3 for 8, 3 runs and RBI. May 10th at the Mariners, 1 for 5. And May 11th at the Mariners, 2 for 5 with a run and a rib. So like I said, he's been that table setter. He's driving in some RBIs here and there, and he's scoring runs. So if you need a guy that can fill in at second base, give you some batting average, and help your team this week, I would give Toro an ad this week. The next ad is Junior Caminero of the Tampa Bay Rays, best hitting prospect in Major League Baseball, and he's going to be up sooner than later as Caminero. He's hitting over 300. The power's gone up a little bit over there in the minor leagues. He's available in 57% of fantasy leagues, and as soon as he gets that call up, he's going to be picked up in over 50% of leagues easily. So I think that call up is sooner than later. And we know this Tampa Bay Ray team's dealing with a lot of injuries this season here, where I think Caminero could easily be their second or third best hitter behind Yonder Diaz, Randy Arozarena, and then either Pardes or Caminero. I believe it will go in that order for this Tampa Bay Ray team. So last season, he did have a cup of coffee in the majors, but obviously he didn't make the roster out of spring training. So last year in a small sample size, 8 for 34, a homer, 7 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a 235 average, and a 278 on base. But like I said, he's down there in the minor leagues tearing it up. Is Caminero, hitting over 300, 7 home runs already, on base guy, and he's played a whole lot in the minor leagues. I know he's only 20 years old, but he's major league ready, is Caminero. And if he comes up this week, I think he could pay big dividends for fantasy owners. If you want to beat other managers to the wire and get him on your team, I believe this is the time to do it, because a week or two from now, he should be in the major leagues. The next hit is Leody Taveras of the Texas Rangers. To Taveras last season, he had some fantasy value, and this year out of the gate, it was a slow start, but the last 2 weeks here, he's been on a tear. On the year, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, 20 runs scored, 4 stolen bases, a 256 average, and a 329 on base. But the last 2 weeks, like I mentioned, 3 homers, 8 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 14 runs, 326 average, 420 on base for Taveras. So Taveras right now, he's available in tons of fantasy leagues at 85%, and he could give you stolen bases. He could show some pop. Last season he actually hit was Taveras, 14 home runs, had 14 bags, and he's on a Ranger team where obviously he's getting a lot of good pitches to hit in that number 9 hole. May 7th at the A's, 3 for 5, 3 runs, 2 RBIs. May 8th at Oakland in a doubleheader, 2 for 8, a homer, 2 ribs, 3 runs scored. May 10th at the Rockies, 0 for 3, a stolen base. May 11th at the Rockies, 2 for 4, a homer, an RBI, a stolen base, 2 runs scored. So right now, he's stealing bases, he's getting on base, he's scoring runs as Taveras. And like I said, in a big-time lineup like Texas with a lot of good hitters and batting ninth, good pitches to see, and fastball counts most likely for Taveras. He's a good ad, and he can help fantasy owners in a solid way, I believe, this week. Next hit is Josh Smith, the Texas Rangers. So Josh Smith, it's been a solid year for him, and he's been filling in with some injuries here over there in Texas. And he qualifies at third, short, and outfield, which obviously is good versatility for fantasy baseball. So right now available in 51% of fantasy leagues. And this most likely is the last chance for owners to go out there and get him is Smith, because if he keeps it up, he's going to be added in more leagues and not be available really. So on the year, 2 home runs, 17 RBIs, a stolen base, 21 runs scored, a 284 average, and a 390 on base. So that's great numbers, especially that on base percentage. And that's what he's going to bring: on base, batting average, and he's going to drive in a decent amount of runs. The power isn't all that great for Josh Smith, but everything else he could bring on is May 5th at the Royals, 0-3, May 6th at the A's, 1-1 with a run, May 7th at Oakland, 2-6, a run and RBI, May 8th at Oakland in a doubleheader, 1-6, 2 runs scored, a rib, stolen base, and May 11th at the Rockies, 0-4. The only thing with Smith, he sat out the last 2 out of 3 games with a lefty in there for the Rockies. Gumber, and May 10th in today's game, Ty Blatch is going to start for the Rockies. But like I said, Smith could bring a lot for fantasy owners. And right now, well, he's out there in 51% of fantasy leagues. I like him as an ad this week. And next ad, Paul DeJong of the Chicago White Sox. DeJong available in 95% of fantasy leagues. And we've seen this a lot throughout DeJong's career, where he'll get hot for a couple weeks and pretty much not do much for the rest of the year. On the whole season, 6 home runs, 12 RBIs, 16 runs scored, a stolen base, a 252 average, and a 292 on base. But the last 2 weeks, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, 11 runs scored, a stolen base, a 310 average, and a 326 on base. So he's a free swinger, is Paul DeJong. Obviously in the latter part of his career, because he's been around a long time now in the major leagues here. And like I said, we've seen this where he's got power surge going, and then he totally fizzles out. And he's the typical power hitter, strikes out a whole lot, not the great on base as well, free swinger, and he's just showing power, and he's on the worst team in the league. May 8th at Tampa, 2-4, a homer, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. May 9th versus the Guardians, 1-4, run, a rib, a stolen base. May 10th versus the Guardians, 2-3, a homer, an RBI, 2 runs scored. And May 11th versus the Guardians, 1-4 with a run. So DeJong, he's bringing the power right now. We know shortstop's one of the weakest positions in fantasy baseball, and since he's playing good right now and showing the pop, I would add him, but it wouldn't be surprising if he's droppable in a week or two as well. Next hitter, Davis Schneider of the Toronto Blue Jays. So Schneider last season showed some flashes in limited playing time. He qualifies at second in outfield, and he's available in 88% of fantasy leagues. On the year, 4 home runs, 15 RBIs, 16 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, a 287 average, and a 388 on base. So he's going out there, he's playing good baseball. In the last 2 weeks, he's tearing it up. 1 home run, 4 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 8 runs scored, a 375 average, and a 475 on base. So he's getting on base. He's been an anchor in this lineup for Toronto, batting and everywhere pretty much. We've seen him bat first, we've seen him bat fifth, we've seen him bat seventh, and he's just making the most of his opportunity. May 8th at the Phillies, 2-3, a run, an RBI. May 10th versus Minnesota, 0-3. May 11th versus Minnesota, a big game, 3-4, a homer, 2 RBIs, a stolen base, and 3 runs scored. So he's getting the everyday job, and he's playing good baseball and showing good pop, and qualifies and plays usually second base, but some outfield as well. So you need some power and a player who's making the most of his opportunity. David Schneider is definitely a good ad this week. The next ad is Kyle Manzardo of the Cleveland Guardians. So Manzardo, he was tearing it up in AAA, and there was nothing much for him to do anymore down there. With so far in the major leagues, 3 for 17, and he's been struggling, 7 strikeouts in the 17 at-bats here for Manzardo with a 176 average. So right now, like I said, he had 9 home runs, hitting over 300 this year in AAA, and there was nothing left for him to do. But so far, off to a slow and struggling start for this Guardian team. May 8th versus Detroit, 1-1. May 9th at the White Sox, 1-4. May 10th at the White Sox, 0-2. And May 11th at the White Sox, 1-3, where they've been batting him 8th and 9th, where not a lot of pressure, and he's a Manzardo in, but versus lefties, he's not going out there and playing right now. So Manzardo's been struggling, but it's 17 at-bats, and obviously I would give him more of an opportunity. Just drop him off your team right now, and like I said, he was tearing it up in the minor leagues. He showed good power. Rays did have him as a prospect in this system and traded him to the Guardians, but like I said, Manzardo, he's a player that can help fantasy owners, I believe. He just has to get more consistent at-bats and get more comfortable in the majors. So right now, available in 81% of fantasy leagues. Next hitter is Jason Dominguez of the New York Yankees. And Dominguez, he came out of nowhere last season. He was tearing it up until he got injured and needed Tommy John surgery. But now he's ready for a rehab assignment, is Dominguez. And he's available right now in 73% of fantasy leagues. And we saw him come up and show that power. 4 home runs last year, 7 RBI, 6 runs scored, a stolen base, only 31 at-bats, a 258 average, and a 303 on base. So Dominguez, he showed power. He gave a spark to that Yankee lineup. And I know they're crowded this year in the outfield here, but they're going to find that bats, I believe, for Dominguez. So right now, since he's going on a rehab assignment, and I believe it'll probably take him a week or two at minimum before we see him in the major leagues, once again, is Dominguez. He's definitely someone to keep on the radar and someone with big-time upside. So right now, well, he's available in 73% of fantasy leagues. He's definitely an ad this week. And the final hitter I looked at off the wire is James Wood of the Washington Nationals. So Wood, over the last week now, he's hit 5 home runs in that time for this national team, including 2 ball games with multiple hit homers. So he was one of the big pieces in the Juan Soto deal a couple MLB trade deadlines ago. And he's a big bopper, big kid. He's got the power, former top round pick for the San Diego Padres. And this is why they got him in that Soto deal. Obviously, with Mackenzie Gore and CJ Abrams being the headliners as well. So Wood, I believe he's going to be in the major sooner than later. And this national team's competing if they really want to have a shot at the wild card, even though I know we're only about 40 games into the season. They're going to call up this blue chipper. And he's a big guy, and he's done it all in AAA. So right now, with the power upside and another young player to add to this national nucleus, and someone who I think can help fantasy owners right away if he gets called up in a week or two. Because right now, he's pushing to get called up, where he's been going off, like I said, over the last week with the 5 home runs. Is James Wood available right now in 83% of fantasy leagues? That's a few hitters I looked at off the wire for week 7 of the fantasy baseball season.